Then I did the billion-year contract deal. I signed up for the Sea Organization when I was 25 years old, and I spent 17 years of my life working for that outfit. And I've spent a great deal of time describing and talking about the abusive nature of that group and its environment and the coercive control that goes on there and the physical and psychological abuse.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. I am your host, Todd Rennebaum. Thank you for listening and thank you for checking out another episode. It is much appreciated, and I guarantee you we've got a great episode again this week. This week I'm talking to a fascinating guy. His name is Chris Shelton. He has a YouTube channel and it's called Chris Shelton. And Chris is a former Scientologist. He was born and raised into that cult. I was going to say religion, but whatever you want to call it. And in his 40s, he decided to leave. He was in it for so long, he was actually part of their Sea Org or Sea Organization. It's like, if you know Scientology, you know what it is. It's like kind of a naval militant kind of group. But anyway, he left and he started a YouTube channel, and he's now helping other people that are leaving cults, and he's experienced a lot of mental health problems during and after leaving Scientology, and he kind of helps people with that and what to expect. So we're going to talk to him about all that kind of stuff. I keep saying we, but it's really just, it's me. Well, it's we, like you and me and everyone else listening, but it's really just me that runs the podcast. So yeah. Anyway, next week I am talking to ADHD coach Nigel Sutton. He is out of New Zealand, and he was diagnosed with ADHD later in life. I know I've been talking about it a lot. So yeah, we talk a lot about what it's like being diagnosed later in life with ADHD. To be honest with you, he does 99.9% of the talking. He's a very energetic guy. But anyway, so we got that. And the week after that, I'm speaking with Amy Over, and she is a Columbine High School shooting survivor. She was even on the shooter's hit list. And so I talked to her about that and about her podcast series, Confronting Columbine, where for the 20th anniversary, she did a little docu-series about that. After the episode today, I'll be reading some fan mail and giving you some dates and stuff of some live appearances by moi and whatnot. So if you want to stick around, check that out too. But in the meantime, and without further ado, I give you Chris Shelton.
Okay, I am a former second-generation Scientologist. I was raised in a Scientology household, and I spent the good part of my life, the better portion of my life, not only practicing Scientology, but working for the Church of Scientology. I was a dedicated devotee, and I spent 25 years of my life dedicatedly working first at a city-level Church of Scientology in Santa Barbara, and then joining...
I seen that one. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, yeah, in Santa Barbara.
I've been to Santa Barbara. A few friends that live there, and yeah, I walked by it right on the main street there, and it's like, hey, that's Scientology. Okay.
Yep, 524 State Street. Yep, that's where we were for many years. I even lived in that building for a while. It's an old hotel. Now, they're not there now. They moved down to Ventura. But it's still called the Santa Barbara Org. Anyway, yeah, they call their churches orgs, by the way, for short for organizations. They don't call them churches, which is kind of its own level of telling. And anyway, yeah, so I worked there, and then I did the billion-year contract deal. I signed up for the Sea Organization when I was 25 years old, and I spent 17 years of my life working for that outfit. And I've spent a great deal of time describing and talking about the abusive nature of that group and its environment and the coercive control that goes on there and the physical and psychological abuse. And that was 17 years of my life. And I endured that and lived through that and got away in 2012. And in 2013, I went down the internet rabbit hole, kind of got all the facts on the thing, like what had I been involved in that I didn't even realize I'd been involved in, how many lies I'd been told, just really blatant, strong stuff, not little tiny lies or half truths. I'm talking like life-changing, deceptive measures, and decided I needed to do something about that. I can't just sit, and I'm not the kind of person who just sits and watches other people get victimized. I wanted to overcome my own problems and issues and mental health, problems because of that, and I wanted to help other people. And so what I did is I started a YouTube channel. I ended up writing a book about Scientology, a breakdown of it, not my life story, but an analysis of Scientology, and then just kind of learning and growing and recovering from the whole experience. And that's and if there's anything that my channel represents, it's the journey of a former cult member coming out of that mindset and acclimating to the real world and learning and growing and trying to document that journey, not just what goes on in my own head though, but how it all works, how all of the psychological traps and deception and the control framework, you could say, of these groups. And by groups I mean destructive cults. And that's what I've now made it my kind of life study, is what I do, is I study this stuff. And so that's what my channel has sort of morphed into now, is a place people can go to learn about how all this works and why people do it and why people fall for it and how they fall into it and how to deal with it and recover from it. All of those things you'll find on my channel.
Mm-hmm. What's your channel name again?
My name, Chris Shelton. Chris Shelton, MSc. I put my letters after my name. I finally earned some letters. So that was part of the journey, was actually going and getting a psych degree in coercive control and learning, like, from a psychological level, what's actually going on here. And that was an amazing thing to do. And that's given me, a little bit more credentialed academic, whatever.
I'm Todd Runnebaum, ADHD.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I have the credentials now.
Yeah, so that's what I do.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is, in my little town here, there are people that are leaving my little town. It's actually all women, are grabbing their kids, leaving their husbands, moving to Florida, and living in some kind of a commune, I guess. And they all have this great leader that they've never met that lives in Hawaii, but it's some weird cult that they've all these local women in southern Saskatchewan are now joining, and like people I know from my town that are.
I'm not familiar with it. What's this group called? Do you know?
I don't even know if it has a name yet, or if it's just like this. I don't know. To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I know the woman. I'd have to ask my wife. I'm pretty sure my wife says they don't have a name. Or a name, or if they do have a name, it's amongst themselves. But a lot of these women they sold Young Living oils and stuff, like this multi-level marketing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know nothing about this stuff, and it's so weird to me.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let me temper some of this with a little dose of, cult vulnerability really isn't any different from somebody who wants to make their life better.
Right.
If you want to make things better in your life, you're vulnerable to messaging that could deceive you. And if somebody's lying to you and presenting you with a picture that is not true, how are you supposed to know that until you could dig in and do research or get experience with the group or find out more about it? You won't know that. And it would be wrong to just assume everybody's trying to deceive you all the time. That would not be a good headspace to be in. So that's how people fall for this stuff. And they get on this train of thinking that this path, whatever it is, whether it's some multi-level marketing scheme like Amway or Herbalife or something, or it's a religious group like Scientology or the Jehovah's Witnesses, or whether it's some business scam, all the way from a Nexium Group to an Enron, People are just trying to get along in life and make their lives better. And that's how these groups appeal to them in the first place. And I don't know anything about this group you're mentioning of people moving down to Clearwater to sell, or being involved in essential oils or something. But it doesn't sound that far from, so many other paths that are offered out there.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with essential oils. It just happened to be that all these women were in the same group selling oils, and then one joined, and then she came back to her group of friends. And so then eventually they all, one at a time, started going down there. So it just happened to be that they were all in the same marketing group thing. But
interesting.
I don't know if there's a connection there between the same kind of thinking, or anyway, I don't know.
Well, it's impossible to say without more knowledge, right? I mean, just going down there on a vacation or something. I have no idea, right? I only know what you're telling me, but I can speak in general terms that, these things have appeal because people want to, make things better for themselves, or specifically trying to solve some very specific problem with themselves, whether it's a mental problem or a financial problem, which it often is related to. There's an awful lot of stress and an awful lot of anxiety connected with economics, right? With money. So it's easy. There are easy ways to, hook people into these things. And a lot of people will judge from a distance, oh, those stupid idiots, how could they fall for that? And it's like, well, if you were in their position, you'd fall for it too. So,
I like to think I wouldn't be, but I mean,
yeah, that's the thing. Think that, but then this situation happens and people get fooled. And if you can be lied to, you can fall into a cult. It's that simple.
Yeah. So when you were in Scientology, did you what kind of gave it away that this isn't, something's not right here? You know what I mean?
Well, sure. Yeah. Well, being raised in it was certainly a nice primer, right? Because it teaches you not to question things and teaches you this sort of moral worldview that these are the good guys, these are the people in the white hats, these are the guys who are doing something effective for saving the world. So being raised in that environment, it is very, very hard to start questioning or overcoming that level of indoctrination. But over time, I said 25 years, I'm a slow learner. It took me a while to kind of pick up on what was going on. And it was really, at first it was, degrading kind of comments, demeaning stuff, things that made me feel bad about myself, and incredibly introvertive, evaluative kind of things that were done to me as a young man, or, as a young person in that group, trying to do the work and being told it was never good enough. I was never enough. I was never producing enough. There were never enough money, never enough people, never enough resources. And so you think it's a personal failing, and you start working harder and harder and harder until you realize one day, I can't work any harder than this. And this situation isn't going to change no matter how hard I work. There must be something else I need to do here. And that was when I hit 25 years old. And after 8 years of slaving away in Santa Barbara, I thought, well, the problem is not just me. It's where I'm at and what I'm able to do in this group. And that's why I signed that billion-year contract and went down to Hollywood and started working in the Sea Organization and the whole paramilitary naval nonsense that Scientology gets up to. So that was an attempt to double down on my beliefs and on my moral foundations and on the idea that I could make a positive difference in this world if I was surrounded by other people who were as dedicated, as hardcore, right? What I now refer to, of course, as fanatical. But I thought that was the way to go. And so I doubled down. Well, within 17 years of that experience was physical abuse, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, psychological torture, and, like I said, physical abuse. So you go, well, okay, I'm willing to give and give and give and give to this cause and even martyr myself for this cause. But there came a point where, after years and years and years of flowing to Scientology and not getting anything back, that I started thinking, wait a minute, something might not be right here. And there were betrayals, and there were certain instances of things happening that were undeniable, um, events that were hypocritical, right? Like, we were saying we were doing one thing when it was abundantly clear by my actual experience. Oh yeah, no, what we're saying we're doing and what we're actually doing are two completely different things. And I saw this with money. I saw this with broken up relationships and destroyed families. And I saw this, even more with money. And then there was the physical abuse. And then finally, it became clear to me near the end, but when I finally got out, that I was going to keep giving. I was 42 years old at this point. I had given the better part of my entire life to this thing. And it just suddenly just dawned, not suddenly, it was a slow progression like all of this is, but it finally hit me. I was never going to get back. I was never going to be receiving how much I'd been giving. The balance was so out of whack. It was undeniable at that point. And that was the point where, that and the lies I was having to tell in order to justify this existence, both to myself and to other people, mainly other Scientologists that I was lying to. And I just thought, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I want my life to be about. I've got a chance now to maybe hit a reset button and do something different here. And that's what I went ahead and did, at great personal sacrifice, because I lost everybody and everything. I thank God I didn't lose my family. My family, my mom and my father, they had gotten out already. But they were kind of flying under the radar. They weren't really out and about and talking publicly about it. They were just going on with their lives. I am the big mouth in the family, right? So I got out, and then seeing and learning about just the levels of deception that I had not even been aware of. I mean, I knew that there were certain things in the church where it was misrepresenting itself, or where it was saying one thing publicly, but privately they were doing other things. And you can give that a pass to a degree when you're an active, avid group member. You can justify that kind of thing. Kind of, right? You can only do that for so long. And once the personal things got too much, and I could sort of see through some of the layers of deception, I got out, but I had no idea what I actually was involved in. And that's what I've been spending the last 10 years of my life learning and educating other people about, is just how bad is this? And not just Scientology, of course, but now these other kinds of groups.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what that'd be like. Like, if you're already having mental health issues enough to want to leave the group, and then it's like walking outside and, the sky is actually green, not blue. And what kind of mental health effects did that have on you, or having on you still?
Well, quite a few. And I'm pretty over it at this point. I mean, I'm not mad anymore, and I'm not upset, and I'm not delusional anymore. But at least not about Scientology. It's hard to describe. So first off, in terms of the emotional ride or journey of this, it's an awful lot like the stages of grief. You have to go through some things. Stages of grief are great, but they're really much, much more than that. They really have to do with how one gains acceptance of almost anything. And you have to go through these various stages: denial, anger, etc. And I went through all of those things many times. It's a sort of a cyclic aspect. You come around, and then you kind of come around again. And there's more anger revealed, or more denial that you have to plow through, because you don't want to believe how bad it was. And the fact of the matter is that something like Scientology is not really like anything else. It's not Catholicism. It's not Christianity. It's not Islam. It's Scientology. It is a deep, deep level of totalistic mind control. And you are being told you're doing one thing while the exact opposite is going on. You think you're going free when in fact you are becoming enslaved. It's crazy how opposite world Scientology is and how they get away with it. But carefully crafted wording and certain practices of manipulation and control, create an environment where you're just kind of going with the flow of it, and you feel that that's the right thing to do. So overcoming that means learning about it, seeing how it applied to you in your life, how other people victimized you, but also how you victimized other people and went along with it, and had to, you had your own contributions to that too. And that's part of the package of recovering from that experience, is seeing what you did too, and taking responsibility for that. And that's a later stage thing. We're not doing that on day one. You got to get through a bunch of other stuff first. But there's a journey here. And I think that this is a journey that a lot of people walk. Some people get a little stuck on the road, and some people get distracted along the way, and some people jump from one cult to another because their emotional needs aren't satisfied, or they don't even understand what their emotional needs are. That's more common. And so you can have lots of different experiences along the way, but basically it comes down to those stages of grief, right? Those stages of acceptance where you kind of have some things to work through, And I've been working through all of those things through the years here. So there has been great deals of anger, great deals of grief and upset and gnashing of teeth and rending of garments and all of that stuff. Until you kind of learn to come to a place where you can let it all kind of go, and you realize that it's awful. It's not like you're letting it go in terms of, well, now they get a pass. It's just you let it go because you don't have to stay emotionally invested in it. You don't have to hold on to that anger. You can release it and let it go, and not let it continue to torture you or weigh you down. Because that's still the group winning,
right? Yeah.
And you come to a place where you can move on past that, and that's therapy, that's education. You have to do both. I don't see any other way through it, but I don't want to project myself onto everybody else. But it's inconceivable to me that anybody could just walk away from a lifetime commitment to a destructive cult like Scientology and think they're fine. It doesn't. That's delusional. It doesn't work that way.
This sounds a lot like addiction recovery. I'm 6 years sober, yes. And it's
yes,
yeah, and then helping others is the 12th step is helping others to recover and come out of it. And so yeah you're kind of you're there now.
That's right. Yeah, actually, that's very much so. And I've kind of been there from day one. I mean, that's something, like I said, I got a big mouth. So I really, I have a thing about letting everybody else know what's going on. And I really like educating people. It's a true joy for me. And it was something that I used to do in Scientology. I was a supervisor, which means a kind of an instructor. That was one of the many jobs that I held there, and I was good at it. And I really enjoyed teaching people things. And so now I get to teach people things that are true.
So when you join the Sea Org, is that the group that when people try to leave, they go after them and follow them around and do all that weird, creepy stuff?
They do that. I haven't had that happen to me, but that has happened to people. Absolutely. What they do is they're stalking and harassing people who now are speaking out against Scientology in a very public way that might have some threat or danger, immediate threat or danger to Scientology. My work is a long-term threat to Scientology. I get people out of there, but they don't see me as the threat that I am because they have bigger fish to fry with Leah Remini or Mike Rinder or Tony Ortega, people who have larger audiences than I do. So therefore, they must be the targets. And they're wrapped up in lawsuits and criminal. There's a criminal trial right now with one prominent VIP Scientology celebrity who's credibly accused of multiple rapes. And they're wrapped up in that stuff, so they don't really have time for people like me, and I'm okay with that. I'm not here to be harassed by Scientology. I'm here to tell the truth. And so I've for whatever reason, managed to avoid them going through my trash and following me around and all that. That could happen tomorrow. I mean, it's not like Scientology has changed its stripes. They're still the totalist control organization that they are. They just ignore me for whatever reason, and I'm okay with that.
But when you were in the Sea Org, did you have to do that kind of stuff?
No.
No.
Okay. There's a special branch that does that. I had no idea. No idea. And most Scientologists don't, of what the church actually gets up to. If I knew that we were stalking and harassing and following and going through trash, and actually the going through trash part I did hear hints about here and there, but I never understood how deep or how atrocious and criminal those actions were. There's a one thing about investigating a bad guy so you can take him to court, and that's kind of what I thought was going on. And all of that activity is siloed into a subunit within Scientology called the Office of Special Affairs, OSA. And that group is very tight-lipped. Everything happens behind locked doors, and it's none of your damn business, and you don't get to ask questions about what they're up to. So I had plenty of other work to do, so I wasn't paying attention to that. I was internal facing. I was dealing with Scientology and Scientologists and doing things, trying to grow it.
I did notice there's some websites about you out there that I was like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah, they did do that. That's true. I did get that. That was the day after I appeared on Scientology in the Aftermath, Leah's Emmy Award-winning show. After I was on that, they took some notice of me, and they had my ex-wife trash me on video, and it's pretty, demeaning, silly stuff, because all of it is based on half-truths and nonsense. I mean, they got the dates wrong of when my son was born. I mean, if you can't get that right, it's like, how are you doing this?
Doing research.
Yeah, it seemed a little silly. I mean, they have full access to my entire life. I confessed everything to them that I had ever said and done. And not just in this lifetime, but in past lifetime. And that's the best they can do, and they don't even get it right. I mean, come on, guys. So it's all rather silly.
Did you have to leave your children when you left the church?
I did not. No. Fortunately, I had a son out of wedlock while I was a Scientologist, and he was born and raised in Australia with his mom. And he's a great guy, and I'm in touch with him now. We're Facebook friends and all that. And I went out after I got out. I actually went and met him for the first time. I went over to Australia, and I spent a week over there and had a great time meeting my son. I had never been afforded the time or money or resources to be able to do that as a Scientologist. And nobody cared, right? They didn't care at all until suddenly I left the Sea Org and left Scientology and started speaking out. And then suddenly I'm this awful dad. And it's like, well, where the hell were you guys for the first 20 years of his life? Where was I? I was a fanatical Scientologist, and I wasn't there. And so he was raised by his mom, and fortunately his mom's a Scientologist to this day. But he is not.
Oh, nice.
And she never forced it on him, to her credit. And I have nothing against her or what she did or how she handled him or raised him, because she frankly did a damn good job despite being a Scientologist.
Nice. Now, one of my favorite musicians is Beck, and he was born into Scientology, and it's this. It bothers me because it's like,
well, he's not a Scientologist anymore, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, he's out.
Oh yes. Okay, good.
Yes.
You just made my day.
Yeah, there you go. About 2 or 3 years ago, he publicly stated he was no longer practicing or involved in Scientology. And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Just saying that publicly will force the Church of Scientology to take action against you because it's a written down law. It's a crime in Scientology to publicly disavow Scientology. So just saying that, he knew, of course, he knows that. Every Scientologist does. It's in their ethics book. They have a whole book of ethics and rules and crimes and high crimes. And denouncing Scientology is one of the most criminal things you can do as a Scientologist. So he really put a lot on the line just saying that much. But good for him. And there's an awful lot of second generation, third generation Scientologists who are doing that, who have stepped away, stepped out, and said, "Yeah, screw this. This was something my parents were doing. This isn't my thing." And good on them for doing that.
No, I didn't realize that. Oh, that's good. No offense to any Scientologists out there. It's just you're a little kooky.
Well, they have an odd belief system, that is for sure.
Yeah.
And to be clear, it's not the beliefs that make it a cult.
Right.
It's what they do with the beliefs. There are Christian cults. I don't have a big problem with Christian belief sets, and turn the other cheek, be kind to your neighbor. There's nothing wrong with those beliefs. But you dial it up and you use those beliefs to browbeat or abuse other people or justify violence towards them. And that's when you stepped over a line. That's when your beliefs are now rationalizing criminal or violent behavior. That's when you have to step back and question, wait a second, what's going on here? What are we doing? So it's not, the fact that people are drinking the blood and body of Christ that makes Catholics bad. It's the fact that Catholic priests have abused children and the Catholic Church has covered it up. That's the problem. And I always try to be super clear about that point because it's an important one. There are no shortage of absolutely batshit, insanely crazy beliefs all over this world. I mean, people believe really stupid stuff, and if you give a person a good enough reason to believe something, they're capable of believing anything.
Yeah. Some people think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the best football team in the world.
Sorry, if that's what you want to believe. But it's not the belief. It's what you do with it.
Right. No, I've heard in this group that where all the local women are going now in Florida, that a lot of them are almost like they're being convinced that they were abused by their husbands and stuff. And it sounds like that's a common thing in a lot of these kind of groups where it's like they convince people that even that like they were sexually assaulted by their parents and stuff like this. And then, so then they cut the ties off of everyone and anyone around them except for people in their group or cult or whatever. Is that something that was common in Scientology, like doing those? What's that thing where you hold the bars and then?
With the e-meters.
E-meters, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can talk about the e-meter, but to address your point of us versus them and the sort of in-group, out-group thing that happens. Right?
Yeah.
It's a great observation, and it's 100% on point. One of the key characteristics of a group, if you're looking at a group and you're trying to figure out, is this a cult or not? Don't look at the beliefs. You got to look at what they're doing. And one of the key things that these groups do across the boards, it's an inherent characteristic of a destructive cult, that they must instill an us versus them mindset. They have to get you in a frame of mind that you're in the group that's the good guys and they're all the bad guys. And those bad guys out there mean you harm. They mean to do you bad. And we are the good guys. We have the truth with a capital T. We have the way. We have the light. We have the whatever, the sacred science. And nobody else does. So we have an advantage over them. We are a higher status of person because of what we know or because of what we do. And when you start thinking that way, I don't care what your belief set, your ideology, your purpose or mission. If you start thinking about other people that way, you have put yourself on the road to extremism. Because it only gets ramped up more and more the longer you're with the group. And they give you more and more reasons to believe that we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And those reasons might include they abuse you, they hurt you, they mean you harm. Well, maybe that's true. And there certainly are no shortage of domestic partnerships that maybe shouldn't exist because of abusive relationships. But to say broadly, all men, all women, all this, all that, these generalized kind of terms and conditions that get set, that's where you're creating a mindset where a person gets into a frame of mind that they feel a little hunted, paranoid, concerned, anxious, worried about what those other people are doing or thinking, and they need to seek the protection and solace and care of their group. And the more reliant you become on a group, any group, the more susceptible you can become to this kind of thinking. And that's not good thinking, right? Because we are all human beings and we are all on the same planet and we do all share the same biology, even if we don't share the same ideology. And it behooves us to recognize that and realize that other people are not, just because they have different ideas than you, that doesn't make them evil, horrible, awful people, you know, but people fall into that very easily. And that's what cult leaders take advantage of.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Stick around. I'm just going to give a quick little break here and talk about episode 34, wherein I talked to Rachel Balseric. She didn't leave her house for 4 years. She had fears of I can't pronounce it, emetophobia, but she also had agoraphobia because of her emetophobia became so bad. And I check it out, and it's a really fascinating story, and she's a really lovely lady, and she's Scottish, so she's got a cool accent. So that's episode 34 with Rachel Balseric. Back to the episode. Well, they're not dummies, them cult leaders.
No,
and it sounds like
they are not.
And like, is it, who's the leader of Scientology? Ron L. Hubbard?
No, David Miscavige now.
Right.
Yeah.
Did he start the that whole secret military police kind of group, or was that there before?
Oh no, that's all the brainchild of L. Ron Hubbard.
Is it? Okay, because it seems like
Lafayette Ron Hubbard. By the way, that's why it's L.
Oh. Because it seems like any kind of dictator on Earth ever, they always have this secret police that, like, So
yes,
man,
it's part of what's called the dictator problem.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You know, if you're going to be a dictator and you're going to succeed at the job, then there are certain things that have to be in place. And one of those things is, as the dictator, your word is law, and there are going to be people who are going to disagree with you. And you're going to have to deal with that disagreement. And the more they disagree and the more they want their way rather than your way, the more you're going to need an enforcement arm. And that's where the secret police and the overt police come into play. And you balance those two forces, but you use them to maintain your dictatorship status. And this is dictatorship 101.
Man. So you mix the two together and you just get it. Like, it's baffling to me, like, the amount of talk about Scientology in the last 20 years that people are still joining. Like, is it not a farce now? Like, how are they? The memberships must be dropping
like flies. It has been shrinking like crazy over the last 15 years. The first major exposure of Scientology on a very public scale. Well, there's a Time magazine article back from 1991, and that was pretty bad. That hit them pretty hard, but Scientology hit back. They filed a hundreds of millions of dollars lawsuit against Time magazine. They lost the lawsuit, but nobody cared because Time magazine had to spend so much money defending themselves that they were never going to run a Scientology story again, right? And neither was any other media outlet. Through the 1990s, they got a real pass by a lot of media because of that. So the 2000s come along, and the group, the hacktivist group Anonymous, steps up to the plate and takes on Scientology after they tried to suppress that video about Tom Cruise talking crazy. Scientology had to try to take that video down. And Anonymous went, "Oh no, you don't." And then they started looking into Scientology and started exposing it and publicly demonstrating in front of churches of Scientology all over the world. It was the most organic, amazing mass protest I've ever seen. And Scientology was just had no idea how to deal with this. They were completely unprepared for it. Their entire rule book and playbook from L. Ron Hubbard from the 1950s on was you go find the individual critic or the small group of critics and you destroy them. You ruin them utterly. That's the Hubbard policy. It's ruin them utterly. But how do you do that with thousands of people walking around your buildings all over the world? It blew them away. They had no response to it. And that was a real blow to Scientology, which showed the media, oh, they can get weakened. They do have a black eye. They're not really the big fanged monster we thought they were. And so the media, and then some key figures came out of Scientology. They escaped. Mike Rinder, Mark Headley. They published some books. They got on media. And these were big wig Scientologists. These were not small time Scientologists. People recognized their names. And they spoke up. And then there were documentaries, and then there were TV shows. And so the 2000s and the 2010s were not kind to Scientology. And all of that public exposure showed them up to be, the cowardly, weak, reprehensible, violent group that they are. And so membership dried up and is still dried up. And they've been losing more people than they've been getting. And we actually estimate right now, just numbers wise, these are estimates. Scientology is not transparent with its numbers, but the people who are doing this, me and other people who talk about this, these are educated guesses. This is based on data we really had and saw while we were in the church. So you don't have millions of members. You have about, maybe at this point, maybe 30,000 active Scientologists all over the world.
Oh.
And that's a high figure right now. So they have claimed in the media tens of millions of members, but they have no records or data to back that up. I've seen the records and data. That's why I can say that with such certainty. I was exposed to that information, and it's not there.
Did you ever meet, oh my God, I wanted to say Tom Hanks. The other guy, Tom Cruise. Thank you. Oh my God, these HGH meds aren't doing anything.
No, I met John Travolta. I met a couple other Scientology celebs, but I never met Tom Cruise in person.
Man, he's so unlikable to me.
He is. He's a horrible person. Yeah, I say this everywhere I go. Tom Cruise is an asshole. He's just not at all interested in anybody but himself. And Scientology enables and empowers him. And so he's not going to leave Scientology. He's also not going to take over Scientology, for just to kill that whole concept, because I get people asking me that all the time. Is Tom Cruise going to take over when David Miscavige is gone? It's like, no, that's not his thing. He's all about public adoration, and his world would shrink enormously if he took over Scientology. That's not what he wants to do.
He likes being the poster boy.
Yeah, he does.
Man, yeah. For years now, even before he was jumping on Oprah's couch, I thought, I don't like this guy at all.
No, he's always been a bit of an ego monster, and that's notable all the way back to stories from the first set he was on with the Outsiders and stuff. I mean, the guy's always just been chock-a-block full of himself. And he therefore was the perfect candidate for Scientology. And he fell for it hook, line, and sinker. And he has estranged his own daughter, his ex-wives. I mean, the man has a past of broken relationships, and everybody looks at him as though he's some kind of Greek god. And it's really quite sad, because the man is a pathetic loser and an ego monster. But They don't see that because he has a winning smile and he flies big planes and rides around on motorcycles. And people believe that that's what he's really like. And it's not true.
Gross. Like
Yeah.
I heard Katie Holmes actually like, I heard the word like escape. It's not like she left him. She had to like escape.
Correct. It was a little bit of an operation. It took her weeks to set up. She had the help of her father, who was a high-powered lawyer in New York. She had bodyguards and various friends and stuff set things up for her. And she did escape from him. And she had to wait till he was out of the country to do it.
Man.
Yeah. Tom Cruise, I'm telling you, there are indications with this guy that he is really bad news behind closed doors. And, people just don't want to hear it because they love that guy's smile.
Mm-hmm. They show him the money.
Silly, but it's true. Yeah, money, money, money. I don't know. I don't get it.
So since leaving, you've remarried and have. Do you have children now with your new marriage?
I do. Not new children. No, I just have my adult son.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And what was it like for your parents to leave? And to like, it must have been a wonderful reunion to like be with them again.
Yeah.
Like, were you
Yeah.
cut off from them when they left?
No, I was not. No, they did not, because they did not speak out publicly.
Right.
They just flew under the radar. That's a term we use, under the radar. It's a term for, you just kind of, that another term for it is physically in, mentally out, PIMO. There's a series of little expressions like that, physically in, physically in, mentally out, physically in, mentally in, anyway, all the different things. But they were out, but they didn't make a big, broad announcement about it. And so Scientology ignored them. And you can kind of get away with that, especially if you live distant from a local Church of Scientology. They'll send people to your door. I used to be one of the guys that would come knocking on your door to get you back. But it's not like they're going to physically, grab you and take you back in. I'm talking about that, you got to convince a person to come back in and cajole them into it and sort of sell them on it again. And that was something I did. It's called recovery. We would go out and do recovery of Scientologists. So people tried to recover my parents. My parents divorced, by the way, and remarried non-Scientologists. So that helped. But they were just went on with their lives. And in 2012, when I left, I contacted both of them separately and said I was on the fence. I was having doubts. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with myself. And they were very supportive. I actually did an interview with my mom that went on for quite some time. We talked about all of this and how I didn't want to cause that disconnection to happen, and they didn't want to cause that to happen. So we had to kind of talk to each other, sort of, kind of carefully. But they made it clear that they would be there for me if I left. And that was what I needed to hear. That was the support. That's all the support I needed to have to be able to take that leap, because that was the big question for me. Is if I leave here, I'm 42 years old, I ain't got no resume, I've got no place to stay, I've got no car, I got nothing. What am I going to do? I mean, that alone will keep you in a group, even if you hate it.
Yeah. Never. That's
right, because you ain't got nothing. Yeah. So having a support network is a big deal, and I made sure I had something in place before I took that jump, and that's what enabled me to do it. Because if I hadn't taken that jump and my parents had, anyway, there's a lot there, but yeah,
we could do. Well, that's why you have your own show. You can talk about it.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's just levels to this, it's complicated for people.
Yeah, it's a lot to cover in an hour, your whole story and everything. But so now do you help others that come out kind of recalibrate themselves to what the real world is and kind of clue them into what the church was and how all the lies and everything?
Yes, I would say, in fact, that's actually one of the main purposes of my channel. Not only does it document my own recovery and work, but it's a very much an educational resource for people coming out of cults. I have interviews with psychologists and sociologists and even neuroscientists. I mean, we really go deep on my channel about how memory works and how, the brain works and why it is that people are susceptible to this stuff at a very basic level and how emotions work. And I enjoy the hell out of this stuff. I find it fascinating to learn all of this and try to help other people with it. So you can go in at a surface level or you can go deep. The videos and work are there for you on my channel. And now that I've gotten this degree and have some feeling of credentials, I'm not a therapist, I am not a counselor, but I do offer consulting to people as a professional service now because I can help people. I've done it for years, helping people out of these groups or helping people to reacclimate to the big wide world. And there's a lot to it. So I like helping people with that. I think it's very rewarding work.
What would you tell parents or spouses of others that have gone and joined a cult? Because they're sitting there worried. Some of them, like some of the people I know, their kids are gone, and they're like, okay, you joined a cult, but now you took the kids too, and they're trying to get their kids back, and it's So what's a piece of advice you give to people that have a loved one that's in a cult that they're worried about?
Sure. The very first piece of advice, and probably the most important one, is don't do anything that's going to cause that person to disconnect or shun you, because you cannot help them at all if they won't listen to you. So if that means you have to swallow your pride, swallow your considerations, swallow your anger, deal with your own nonsense about, your own thoughts and ideas, I don't mean nonsense, but your own internal problems or issues with this group or with what your loved one is doing, you gotta hold that back. You can't just dump all that on the person and speak your truth and think that they're gonna just listen to that and be okay with it, because again, there's that us versus them thing. Let me stress that they're in a place, they're in a headspace, in a group that is actively creating that mindset in them. They're looking for an excuse to disconnect from you, to shun you, to kick you out of their life, because they want to be part of this new wonderful thing and you just don't get it. And they do. They're in the group. They're full of all the beliefs and the ideas and the wonderful awe and the glory of it and how wonderful it is. And here you come along, Mr. Wet Blanket Spoil Sport, telling them it's all lies and deception and nonsense. They don't want to hear that from you. They don't want to hear that at all. So unless you're very good at getting that across to them and you can do that and you know what you're doing, and very few people do, don't do it. Don't go there, right? Instead, talk about the things you still have in common. Don't talk about the group. Talk about other stuff. Talk about things that are the basis of your relationship in the first place. Demonstrate love and caring and compassion with them, not hatred and antagonism and this, oh, you're just a stupid idiot for falling for all this stuff. You tell people stuff like that, you're pushing them into the cult. That's how it works. That's how people are. When you get defensive, you double down on your position. You don't go, oh, you got a point. That's not how this works, right? So this is just basic psychology I'm talking about here. There's exceptions to all these rules, and this is why sometimes consultation with professionals is necessary, because context is always king. The circumstances, the group, how long the person's been involved, whether there's romantic relationships involved in the group, whether they're married into the group, whether whether their job depends on them being in the group. All of these are considerations, right? And for you to come along and just badmouth it, they're not gonna believe you. And so instead of doing all that, highlight and accentuate the positives of your relationship and work on concentrating on those parts, because eventually, statistically speaking, and if it's a year or two or 3 or 4, then that's what it is. But eventually they will start questioning what they're involved in, because the group is a destructive cult, and it will give them reasons to question. It will do bad things to them. It can't help it. That's the whole point of destructive cults. And again, we can talk about MLMs. We're talking about religious groups. We're talking about, petty dictators who run martial arts dojos. You get cultic situations.
Gurus.
Yeah, gurus. Any group can turn into this kind of authoritarian little tyrant setup. It all depends on the nature of the relationship between the leader and the followers. So you're trying to insert yourself into that relationship. Don't. Just be there for the person. Be a sounding board for them. Be somebody they can go to. Always let them know, I'm here for you no matter what. I'm not going to judge you.
Boy,
and then don't judge them.
That's a lot of patience.
Yes, it is. It's an awful lot. And unfortunately, by the time people come to me or my channel or come to try to learn about this from other people, I mean, I'm not the only one doing this, but by the time people start looking, they've already made too many, or a bunch of mistakes. They got pissed at the person. They yelled at them. They told them what a fool they were. They insulted them. They've almost broken the relationship already. And so that's why I stress this stuff is kind of like, no, pull yourself back, control yourself. Don't do that to them. Just be a friend or a family member and unconditionally love the person no matter what the hell they're getting involved in. That doesn't mean, by the way, and this is really crucial too, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Don't lie to them. You don't have to say, oh, that Dianetics sounds like great stuff. Don't say that if you don't think that.
E-meters, get me one.
Yeah, exactly. Just don't go there.
Right.
It's easier and better to do that.
Avoid those and talk about the weather.
Exactly. Exactly. Maintain the relationship, because then you have an opportunity in the future to be there for the person when they inevitably start having questions and doubts about the group. And that's the best advice I've got for people. I know it's a little long-winded, but I get passionate about this stuff because people screw it up so often.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's good because there's, like I said, I don't know how many listeners I have in my own hometown, but if there are people around here that know what I'm talking about, this thing that's phenomenon that's happening around here right now, it's better to know this now than, like you said, later, and you've already kind of pushed them away, or they'll stay in the cult out of spite because you told them they're stupid or whatever. Yeah.
That's right. Let me say one more caveat on this real fast, because it's important to say this. Generalized advice is only generalized advice, right? like I said, context is king. And there are circumstances where a person is in physical danger, or they are putting other people in physical danger. And I mean like real danger of losing their lives or losing their limbs or somehow hurting themselves or others in a significant way. If you are absolutely positive that's what's going on, or you are fearful about that going on, you are perfectly within your rights to contact local authorities and have them look into it. Okay. So I want to put that there because some of these groups get pretty extreme, right? And do really nasty, crazy stuff, including rituals or practices that are harmful to people physically and even dangerous or destructive of their livelihood. So
or sexually to children, or trafficking, exactly. that was another question I was going to say, is like some of these cults, they're like doomsday ones. There's like, there's a big clock ticking down. We all got to drink whatever on whatever day. And so, man, that'd be tough being a loved one trying to deal with that and try to filter out the shit that they're feeding you and get the truth. It's one thing if a friend of mine joined Scientology. I know there's no doomsday countdown or anything. You can be patient, you can wait it out, but I mean, you never know with some of these other ones.
Yeah, if you're dealing with a Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
then it would be rational and justified to take other more extreme action to try to intervene. But even there, study the situation as best you can first. Know before you go, because there are some lines you're not going to be able to cross and then pull back.
Right.
If you call the cops on somebody, that's a point of no return.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh
you
God.
really, you want to be sure.
As a
you know
father, this just makes me sick thinking about this. It's like, oh my God.
that's why I hope that we could educate people on this kind of stuff before all of that has to happen. That's the challenge we have in this field.
I'm curious if like you said, the numbers of Scientology have dropped way down, but I wonder in cults in general if they're down or if they're up or.
Generally speaking, they're up. And the reason why is anxiety, right? Emotional anxiety and depression and economic stress and worry. These things, put people in a state of mind that they become a little frantic or a little concerned or upset, and that makes them more vulnerable. It's an unfortunate thing about our minds and our brains that the more revved up you are emotionally, the less thinking you're able to do. And this is a world we live in now that's pretty complicated.
Or,
we're in a pretty,
or at least less critical thinking you're able to do.
well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
Is questioning what's going on around you, or if you find something that is very emotionally satisfying to you in the moment, your brain's not going to just kick in and start telling you, hey, well, hold on a second now. Wait a minute. This might not be good for us, unless you train your brain to do that. It's not an organic response to question good things, good feelings, euphoria, awe, this wonderful experiences that people can be induced to have. You're not set up to question that kind of thing, and that's the discipline of critical thinking. But anybody can be lured or entrapped into this kind of stuff, and really, frankly, how smart you are has very little to do with it. So,
yeah. I mean, I like to say I would never do it, but when we were locked down and there was all this QAnon stuff going around. There was a couple of weeks there I was like, what, really? Oh, Hollywood's eating babies, and then it's like, wait a minute, fuck this, but
right.
If I was just a little more vulnerable or just the right time, I might have been right in there like a dirty shirt. But
that's right.
So yeah,
that's right. Well, especially when and on something like that, the awfulness is that the world it can be rather an awful place.
Yeah, there's like sprinkles of truth in it too, right? It's like
exactly, and you can find that. But that doesn't mean that Hillary Clinton's a pedophile, baby eater. I mean, come on. It's like we don't have to connect those dots quite so strongly. Jeffrey Epstein is a monster. Ghislaine Maxwell is a monster, and they got caught and they're in prison now. And there's a lot of questions about how many people were involved with them and that kind of thing from both ends of the political aisle. But but the way that how goofy this is all the noise being made about it is one-sided. It's it's all the Republicans. No, it's all the Democrats. No, man, it's all of them. I mean, that has nothing to do with whether somebody's a pedophile.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could be a pedophile on either end of the ideological
yes. spectrum, Yeah, we're politicizing pedophilia now.
I know. It's so dumb, and for people like me, I go, guys, come on, can't we do better at this? Because QAnon is as crazy as it gets. I mean, that I've been down the QAnon rabbit hole. It's not personally believing it, but I used to be a conspiracy theorist when I was in Scientology. It's a key part of the Scientology mythology that you embrace 9/11 truther levels of conspiracy theory. L. Ron Hubbard was a conspiracy theorist. So I used to listen to Alex Jones. I used to listen to David Icke. I used to watch their DVDs. I used to use this information to recruit Scientologists. So I'm very familiar with their shtick. And it's a fear-mongering, illogical shtick. They connect dots that don't connect. And yet, when you get people anxious and riled up and looking for answers, and they don't really understand how the world works or their place in it, or how macroeconomics works, or how, foreign relations work and how countries relate to each other, they come up with goofy ideas, and those goofy ideas, unfortunately, that ignorance can be fed and taken advantage of. And so that's how you get things like flat earth and QAnon and this kind of nonsense.
Man, flat earth.
Oh, yeah. Down that rabbit hole too.
Man, last summer, I ran into a lady who I hadn't seen in, okay, I'm 45, so it would have been over 30 years. I used to babysit her daughter, and she gave me a big, wonderful embrace. And, how are you doing? And our families were kind of friends and stuff. And we're, just having a nice talk for about 2 minutes. And within 2 minutes, she's telling me how there's deep underground military bases, and they're all connected. And the local city here they're transporting children and money and all the, like all this crazy stuff. And
this is rife in Canada as well. Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, she's a teacher.
Yeah,
and she's a teacher. I was like, my jaw dropped. I was like, well, it was good catching up with you. I was like,
yeah,
wow.
I came across a flat earther English teacher one time on Twitter, and I was like, oh, somebody needs to let this guy's school know what's going on, because it's there's a level of belief, and then there's delusion and paranoia and actual clinical pathology there, and when you're down the level of flat earth, you are in a land of pure delusion, and it's a dangerous place to be. And I am not suggesting that there's some organic biological component there, but I'm saying that you've bought into a worldview and headspace that is truly disturbed, and it really does need it really craves professional help. And I wish we had more resources to give that help. And that's the biggest problem is not that exists. The biggest problem is that we don't have the resources to combat it.
I don't know. I mean, this is still on topic, I guess, but it's a little less than, trying to leave a cult and the mental health effects and all that stuff. But still, at the same time, I agree that if you truly believe that the earth is flat, there's still some kind of mental health possibly issue there. Something.
There's a lot. There's actually a book called what is it? Amongst the Truthers. Brilliant book. It's very good book. I do recommend it. I can't remember the author's name, but it's called Among the Truthers, and it's a deep study of conspiracy theory. And the author provides about 7 or 8 different explanations for why people fall down a conspiracy mindset or rabbit hole. And mental health issues are actually a minority of reasons why. It's really not, that mentally ill people who actually have cognitive impairments and an inability to logically think, generally don't go down these rabbit holes because they're complicated, convoluted, lots of moving parts to them. And truly deranged people have a hard time thinking that clearly. There are other reasons people go down these rabbit holes that have a lot to do with emotional investment and trauma. And that really can't be understated, right? Trauma is a powerful motivator. If you lose a child, you are somebody who can become susceptible to anti-vax rhetoric very much easier than, say, you or me.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have just had the most devastating loss of your life, and you are desperately craving answers.
Right.
And suddenly, here's a very easy to understand one. Oh, these vicious, evil doctors and the vicious, evil corporations. And let's face it, the corporations are kind of vicious and evil.
It can be,
So it's not a hard sell.
Yeah. That's sprinkle of truth there.
That's right. And they didn't test those vaccines, and vaccines cause this and that and the other thing. And that's why your child is dead. And once you cling to that, once you accept that as the reason, you'll go to the ends of the earth to right that wrong. And that's not mentally ill.
No.
That's just grossly misinformed. And so overly emotionally committed because of the trauma that they can't think their way through any other, you can't counter it with any facts, and that's one example of how this happens.
Thank you so much, Chris. You were very informative, and you're just an all-around super nice guy. I wish you all the best in the future, and I look forward to possibly collaborating with you again and having you on again. I kind of talked about some local women and some issues with a cult going on around here, and I'm going to see if I can't figure out a little bit more and maybe interview somebody about that. We'll see in the future here. But anyway, thanks, Chris. So last week I spoke with Shiva. She's an Iranian woman who is now a student here in Canada. She had a very, I'd say emotional, very touching interview. And somebody wrote in to me about that interview. Her name is JC Dawn. She says, "Oh my goodness, my heart breaks for this woman. This episode was absolutely heart-wrenching. To hear the sadness in her voice made me feel a little more grateful for my freedom and safety today. I really hope you get some relief and goodness comes to you. Thank you for sharing, Shiva." Thank you, JC Dawn. I couldn't agree more. It was very heart-wrenching, and she's such a sweet lady. And I've actually known Shiva for, about a year, I think, through mental health stuff, and I think I'm going to meet her this weekend for a coffee. She's coming to my hometown here where I'm living, so that'll be nice. I'm recording a live episode with stand-up comedian Big Daddy Taz at the Indian Head Grand Theater on January 13th, and those tickets have been sold out, mostly because the entire local high school is coming, so there wasn't a whole lot of seats available, but it sounds like there's not going to be any room, so that's pretty cool. That's 1:30 p.m., and I'm looking forward to that. And there's also an event in Regina, Saskatchewan that I will be speaking at the Connexus Arts Center January 25th, and it's called More Joy Regina. You can go online and look that up and get some tickets. I'm not the keynote speaker. There's going to be a few speakers there, and it's just going to be a really, really great event. Do you have some teenagers that you would like to be exposed a little more to around mental health and positive mental health and some tools and stuff? Please go to youthmatter.ca, and it's not every Tuesday, but there's certain Tuesday nights throughout the month where they have guest speakers, and it's all over Zoom and stuff, and it's all based towards youth. So if you have any youths and you have a computer or they have a phone, please go to youthmatter.ca and check out their Teen Talk Tuesdays. And also, if you want to send a message or a note or a letter or a question or a comment or some hate mail or some fan mail, whatever, please follow me on Bunny Hugs and Mental Health on Facebook, Bunny Hugs Podcast on Instagram, and Bunny Hugs Podcast on TikTok. And there's also videos and clips and some memes and stuff you can check out. And send me something to read. Before I go, I just want to give a shout out to my buddy Joel. I love you, man. I'm thinking about you, and I hope to see you soon. My mind's a little distracted right now because I know you're hurting right now. So, hey, buddy, hope to talk to you soon. And as for everyone else, please remember to make your beds and to take your meds. Bye.